What's that story you've never been able to tell? I found out when I was 28 that my dad's side of the family had been in the witness protection program my entire life, and that their names were not what I had been told. My mother told me this because I honestly don't remember. I was around the age of 5 to 7. We were at my grandfather's apartment, and right outside of his door, I stopped and turned around and said in very serious voice, "Grandfather's dead." Turns out I was correct. Died in his sleep. I didn't understand the concept of mortality at the time, so this understandably freaked out both my parents. About 6 months ago, I was very close to suicide. I actually was about to do it, thinking about killing myself, and at one point I had agreed to myself I would end it. I got home that night, and it was just me and my cat as my fiancée was at work. My cat, I think she knew I was sad, and she never sits in people's laps, sat up in my lap and proceeded to flip on her belly and play wrestle with my hand. I broke down for about 3 hours. My fiancée came home knowing none the wiser, but had brought my favorite dish from her work brewery because she knew I was feeling down. I've never told her that was the night I decided not to pull the trigger. Just want to put a little edit out there. Y'all are all too kind. I tried replying to as much as possible, and it's good to know there are so many kind souls out there. If you ever feel the same way I did, be sure to find someone who will listen. It can be me if you want, or the suicide hotline, anything. Just know the world is a better place with you in it. Stay strong. When I was a college freshman, I tried to boil 3 eggs, then fell asleep. I woke up to a smell. I went to the stove and the water was completely gone from the pot. So like an idiot, I got some water in a big bowl and poured it into the pot. You probably know where this is going. The eggs exploded like dynamite. Scalding hot egg hit my face. It blew me back and knocked me to the floor. Here's the scary part. I felt my face and looked at the egg on my finger, but thought it was burnt skin coming off my face. I almost started crying. How badly burned was I that my facial skin came off to the touch? I walked to the bathroom shaking and looked in the mirror. I expected to see a horribly disfigured face, but I saw egg and eggshells. I wiped it with my hand and felt incredible relief. I also felt incredibly stupid, but so what, right? I spent the next hour cleaning egg off the ceiling, the walls, the floor, etc. My face was red for a couple days. In elementary school, we had a program called DARE, where a police officer would come into our class and teach us about the dangers of substance and alcohol abuse. At the end of the year, he prompted us to write an essay about what we learned over the course of the year in DARE. He also advised us that the author of the best essay in the class would receive a stuffed lion, appropriately named Darren. Now, I really wanted this lion, but the problem with that was my writing skills were those of a typical third grader. There was no way that anything I wrote about my time in DARE would stand out enough from my fellow classmates to win Darren. So I did what any desperate 10-year-old would do, Googled DARE essay contest winners, and then plagiarized the first one that came up in my searches. Now this was done diligently, carefully proofreading to ensure that I wasn't going to turn in an essay with somebody else's name in it somewhere. I went through and changed phrasing or a word here and there, but by no means would it pass through Turnitin.com with less than 90% plagiarized. Confident in my chances of winning Darren, I turned in the essay to Mr. Officer, and what do you know? A week later, we had our end-of-year reception at the municipal building, which also contained the police station. He listed the top 3 essays, 3rd place, 2nd place, and then he said, "Holding Darren." The best DARE essay submitted this year was written by Yosoi Corey. Come on up here, get your Darren stuffed animal, and read your essay to us, please. I was so excited I won the animal, it was never even a thought that crossed my mind that I would have to deliver this speech. So I reluctantly walked up, took my stuffed animal, and all I can remember at this point is shaking so bad, it looked like I was going to fall over at the mic. All of my classmates, all of their parents, and the entire local municipality's worth of police officers with their full attention on me, a 10-year-old little fraud of a student. To this day, it's one of my most shameful moments, and I still have Darren sitting on my desk for discouragement from copying others' work. 6 years ago, I was in Svalbard. Walking to my accommodation out of town with shopping in light snow midwinter, little visibility. A guy on a snowmobile drives up behind me and asked where my gun was. They suggest you always have one for polar bears. I didn't have one, and he was like, "You crazy. Get on the snowmobile, there's a polar bear in town." So I did, shopping bags and all. Lucky me. I was a lonely kid in the mid-2000s and I joined chat rooms like most kids caught teens my age. I was a little younger than the average kid on there, as far as I knew, so I lied and upped my age on them. Said I was 15 or 16 instead of 11 or 12. I never gave actual info. I said I lived in a different state, almost always gave a fake name. I thought I was clever. I mostly used the sites to either A, talk to girls my age about life in school and boys, or B, roleplay chat with boys because my family was very strict and religious and I was curious about sex. I was super inexperienced and thought I could get some information or at least explore some different feelings from it. Looking back, that could have gone terribly wrong. However, it was the former reason that got me in trouble. A few years after my parents found out about the chat sites and grounded me permanently from the internet, without supervision anyway, my dad got a call at work from an FBI agent located in our state asking about me being his daughter and my email address. I had foolishly given a girl my email address and exchanged names and small talk before she asked to exchange pictures. She sent one first and it was so weird it freaked me into not sending one. The picture was so overtly sexual that I was just not interested. I forgot all about her after that. Turns out she was some 40-year-old child porn collector in a different time zone who was getting pictures from kids and swapping them around with other pedos. It was a very complicated but apparently normal thing for those types of people. My email had been found in his computer and so they had to talk to us since I was still a minor. I didn't reply with a picture so they weren't too worried about it. I wasn't much help, I don't think. I still refer to that person as a her when I think about it, or when I tell someone like my SO. The FBI lady called later to tell my parents he had been found guilty and sent to prison. I don't know his name, I don't want to. It definitely freaked me out for a long time. 2014. It was my first night in college. My roommates, strangers, didn't show up. We lived in a 3-story apartment complex with 4 apartments, each level in a freshman building. Well, the neighbors are partying and I get out of my comfort zone and walk outside. Outside, some guys are drinking and one of the guys invites me in to party and so begins my college experience. Lo and behold, I get wasted just like many of the others. I head back to my apartment on the same level and the party has moved slightly to my apartment, but there are just like 6 people there. I start asking people to leave as I'm going to bed, but I'm so drunk I know I don't care if they stay or go. I go to my room and there is a guy crashed in it. I tell him he doesn't need to leave, but please move over, and he does. I wake up and freak out because I have a boyfriend. I check to make sure we didn't have sex. No, but you came into my apartment asking everyone to leave and told me I could stay in your bed and hopped in. Confused, I ask him to clarify. Dude, this isn't your apartment. Took about 30 seconds to realize I'd just arrived at the wrong apartment and slept in a stranger's bed, my first night in college. Back when I was in high school, I wanted to approach this girl on a bus on my way to school. She was really hot and I knew I'd regret it if I didn't approach her. There was one big problem. There was a middle-aged lady seated next to her and I couldn't talk to this girl with the lady right next to her. I had to think of a quick way to get rid of the lady. I then woke up from my seat, slowly walked to the row they were seated, and calmly asked the lady, "Excuse me, ma'am, could you please let me sit next to my sister?" Turns out the lady was the girl's mom. My uncle sexually assaulted me for a number of times when I was a kid, around when I was in primary school. I didn't even understand what was happening back then, but it just didn't feel good. I started to hide whenever he was around, either in the closet or under the bed. Sometimes my younger brother would hide with me too, thinking it was some kind of game. He eventually stopped coming. I later learned that he got divorced with my biological aunt. I'm 23 now and has never told one soul about it yet. Growing up, I'm just trying to not let it bother me. Seems like the older I get, the harder it is for me to tell someone physically about it. This is the first time I'm writing this online too. Even then, I feel like I'm letting out my burden. I'm glad I came across this post. I'm not sure if it has something to do with it. Maybe it does a bit. But I still can't get into any serious romantic relationships. It's so hard for me to trust guys. I even get scared thinking of having sex with someone. Edit. Half a day later, and I still can't believe I did this. Been reading a lot of posts, and my heart is breaking with just how many of us had to go through it as well. Everyone has been really brave, just wow. Thanks for everyone's support. I'll keep them all in mind. I still have a lot to go myself, but I never knew such simple replies could give me a lot of strength already. When I was in kindergarten, I fell asleep on the bus to school. No one woke me up. I wake up eventually and the bus is empty. I panic, as any 5-year-old does, and run to the front of the bus and try the door. It's locked. It was parked in a KFC parking lot, so people were coming in and out of the building. I started wailing with terror, banging on the glass doors, snot pouring down my face and into my mouth as people walk by and point at me. They mumbled and got into their car and left. By the time the bus driver finally came back out with her chicken meal, the entire door was covered in my slobber and tears. She instructed me how to open the closed door so she didn't have to put her meal down. I was still freaking out, obviously, and didn't understand. So she sighed, put her food down, and finally opened the door and asked me what was I doing there. She called the school and drove me there, still covered in snot. I remember walking into my class with everyone standing in a line and hugging me one at a time. After that day, they made a rule for all bus drivers to get up and walk the bus front to back to make sure no kids get left sleeping. The night my son was born, my wife lost a lot of blood. In an instant, our delivery room was filled with 25 medical personnel after a rapid response call. My wife was white as a ghost and hardly coherent. I stood beside her, holding her hand while she received emergency blood and plasma and platelets. I was in total shock in the moment until my wife locked eyes with me and asked, "Am I dying?" I lost it. I'm losing it now. Typing this. It was the scariest moment of my entire life, and I really have trouble reliving it. 8 months later, wife and baby are happy and healthy, give birth in hospitals. You never know what can go wrong, and the staff there saved her life that night. I had a chat with one of the most notorious pedophiles in my country. It was odd. He spoke in a way that made it seem like he was my age. I was 7. He eventually tried to trick me into touching his dick by buying me a hot dog and a soda. I only declined and bailed because I was low-key offended that he put mustard on the hot dog he was offering me. The time my mom needed to go back into the house to get a scarf. Because of this, we were held back and missed a bus by 10 seconds. That bus then crashed into a bridge at very high speed because the bus driver had mental health problems. It is the closest I have ever been to death. I will never complain about my mom going back to get a scarf in my life again. When I was about 14, I found a slingshot in the woods. It was a pretty good slingshot that must have cost a fair bit, as it had a metal frame and a thick rubber sling. One day, my friend and I were on top of a hill out in the countryside, and a jogger came running out of the nearby tree line. He was some distance away and below us. Without putting a lot of thought into it, I shot a stone just above his head. The rock went exactly where I wanted it to, but if there was wind or my aim was off or 1,000 other factors, I would have seriously fucked that jogger up. I muse on that at least once a week. I never see my friend, and we haven't spoken about it since it happened. In 6th grade one night, I was like, I really don't feel like going to school tomorrow, so I looked up how to get a fever. I found a tutorial that said to take a bath at the hottest temperature your bathtub will go and then stay up all night. I decided to try it, and I started the water for a steaming hot bath. It stung to get in it, and I somehow survived it for 30 minutes. When I was getting out, I felt dizzy, and then I fell on the floor and had a seizure. I woke up and saw the blinding ceiling lights of the bathroom, and the first thing I thought was, am I dead? And then I threw up in the toilet next to me and had a migraine for the night, and later found out I got first-degree burns, so long story short, don't do that.